I learned from Elaine Ingham, and then I started reading your books, and it felt like I was following the same path. And you go into the plant processes and you map it out so well. I feel like your trilogy maps out so much. I mean, it is like the primer for everyone getting involved and understanding the relationship between plants and soil.
Well, I appreciate that. And of course, Dr. Elaine, she's the goddess of goddesses. I mean, put us all down the right path. I can tell you that right now. And actually, teaming with microbes, I wrote for her because she didn't have time. She's so busy doing all sorts of stuff. But yeah, and the trilogy is about to become. I like to call myself Lord of the Roots because I have three books out. But the trilogy is about to become a quartet with a book coming out on September 27th. And it's teaming with Bacteria, the Organic Gardener's Guide to Rhizophagy and Endophytic Bacteria.
This is amazing. Oh, I'm
Yeah,
so
yeah,
excited to read it. Ah,
it'll be fun. It'll be fun. Of course, as you know, both subjects are in their infancy.
yeah.
I think we add Dr. James White to the pantheon, and if I could pronounce her name, unfortunately I can't. The wonderful woman in Australia who discovered rhizophagy. But in any case, the soil food web uh, operates the same as it did before. We just know a little bit more about it. I think, as you've indicated in your book, there, we really are just in the shallow end here. We haven't figured out how to survive in the deep end of the soil. So we'll get there. We'll be swimming in there and figuring out what's going on. And this is an advancement that I thought was important enough, to have a separate book on. I mean, it really, when you know that some plants get 40% of their nitrogen from this process, you got to add it to the soil food web. But in any case, soil's fabulous and fascinating, and I'm glad I don't live in Texas with your soils. That's all I can say.
Ah. Oh man, did you catch James White's new paper on
Of
E.
course,
coli?
yeah. I've been following his paper. Yeah, the whole idea that trichomes, of course, that was when I wrote the book a year ago, or maybe I guess, yeah, been about a year because it goes through that process. That was a theory that trichomes, it was a theory, and it was pretty obvious that, hey, that's got to be. So it's mentioned as a theory but stay tuned, and of course, boom, quick. So things are really advancing. It's really terrific. The whole concept of the soil food web. When Dr. Elaine started talking about this stuff, I mean, of course, there were a lot of people who just laughing their heads off. They couldn't wrap their heads around it. I remember going to a meeting in two, 1998 or nine, I think, and asking garden writers of America whether anybody knew what a mycorrhizal fungi was, and nobody did. Uh,
Wow.
and she spoke at that meeting, and I'll tell you what, the scales fell off the eyelids. And uh, I don't think there's a real garden writer anywhere in America, probably in the world, that promotes chemicals. Period.
Mm.
Whereas it used to be 100% use this, put this on it, mix this green powder or whatever, and that's just not the. That's just Whew. So when I look at Dr. Elaine, I think, my God, the revolution that she spurred. I mean, just unbelievable, unbelievable.
And
We owe
it's
her an incredible debt.
and I've gone back and read her papers, and it's really fascinating because it's clear, like you said, she's doing so much. I kind of fall into this busybody thinking, and my wife's like, "You need to eat. You need to do this." Ha!
Yeah,
And it's clear from a paper she wrote in 1981 on how to actually image roots for mycorrhizal inoculation rates, right?
right. Yeah,
With
in
epi
80 in
fluorescence
81.
in
Yeah,
81. So she
right, right.
understood theoretically all of these things before anyone had ever put them into regular practice. So
Yeah, and I think she suffered the slings and arrows of people who were not as advanced as she was, and who didn't have the grounding in the subject that she had. And anyway, she's quite remarkable, and we all owe her a gigantic debt. I mean, from regenerative soils, that's soil food web to me, to no rototilling. I mean, you think of forget the amateurs, the professionals, the farmers who operate using the soil food web. Have no idea who Dr. Elaine is and what she did for them. I mean, it's just simply incredible.
wow,
Nobel Prize winning kind of stuff as far as I'm concerned. But who am I?
absolutely,
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, and I actually would love to like, I don't know, someday like either do it or have someone else do it, but a documentary because those papers were written with her husband and her together as this like tag team for like 10 years. They're like co-writing these incredible papers and gathering other people from other parts of the food web because they were nematodologists, right? And so they gathered other people to
Yeah, yeah,
represent the different members, and then they created the monologue,
yeah. Well, I think they also put
a
together the
monogram.
science. Yeah, the different sciences were put together. So there was a merging of microscopy and it just all came together. And again, I say we owe her a gigantic
Really?
debt. Yeah, yeah,
That's fascinating that I didn't know the part about the microscopy. Obviously, they
well, I
don't say
mean,
in these papers like we're the first to do that. You know what I mean? That's how
no,
science papers work.
no, definitely not, definitely not.
But I
But
didn't
anyway,
understand the contect. That's
yeah, and
amazing.
and again, there were people who just laughed at the soil
Mm.
food web. Come on, don't forget it. And then you go back, and I mean, the change is so radical. You go back, I have collections of old organic gardening, farming and gardening magazine, Rodale magazines, way back in the 50s. You can't find the word bacteria or fungus unless it's a negative associated with it. And
Or
and
endophyte.
oh my God,
Endophyte is the
endophytes.
rarest word. That's why James White has been so amazing. And I mean, he's been at it for I think 40 years at
Yeah,
Rutgers.
quite some time, quite some time. And I got introduced to her by a woman who just died last week, unfortunately, Judith Fitzpatrick, who invented a gadget called the microbiometer, which measures the microbial mass in your soil. And
Whoa.
so, if your microbial mass is growing, the soil food web is operating in a way that it's adding to your soils. It is regenerating your soils. And if your microbial mass decreases because you're doing something to it, then you're losing. And it's a terrific little instrument that you operate. It's a test. You do it in your own backyard if you want to.
Mhm.
You use your cell phone to make it operate, and you get a reading on your cell phone. It's just for $5. It's just incredible. To me, it's going to replace the pH test, not replace the pH test, but it's going to be comparable to the pH test. It's that important. It tells you whether your soils are teeming with microbes. But she and again, I say she just passed away, and it's really sad. She really got the concept, and every now and then people do. And James White was introduced to me by her
Mm.
because she had read a couple of his fungal papers and whatnot. And really, the first time I talked to him and I saw that he had a mushroom behind the head, he was sitting there, and I had to pinch myself. Yeah, he's really a mycologist more than a
Mhm.
bacteriologist. I think I could be wrong, but anyway, what a
He
terrific
is.
guy!
Yeah, he's in
And
the
to have,
he's a mycologist.
yeah, he's a terrific guy, and there's so many wonderful papers. Oh my gosh, when you write a book, you read a lot of papers, and there's so many terrific papers that he wrote about endophytic fungi as opposed to endophytic bacteria, to the point where I think I might have to go back and amend, or not amend, I guess they call it revising in the publishing world, teaming with fungi, to put a good solid chapter on endophytes because they're really important. And for those who don't know what we're talking about, an endophyte is a microorganism that lives inside a plant for at least part of its life, not necessarily its entire life, without harming the plant. And very often they help the plant. Oh, in fact, almost usually they help the plant. Otherwise, the plant gets rid of them. But so, yeah, they're very important. And we're beginning to learn how to breed them and harness them, and their use is trickling down into the gardening world. So ordinary people can use them.
So how did you get started in gardening?
I grew up, as I think I mentioned, in this community in Westchester County that people don't think of as a farming community. But we lived on 8 acres, and my father was a frustrated farmer. He'd come home every night, take his dress shoes off, put on his gardening shoes, and go out and garden. So if you wanted to be with my father at all, you had to spend time in the garden. And that's what we did.
Wow.
And it was quite a great way to grow up where I grew up because we grew most of our food. Most of the people did not. And so I learned something, which is terrific. Now, he was a chemical gardener because our family has an association with Miracle Grow. The guy who started Miracle Grow worked for my father and grandfather in the butter business, hated it so much that he looked for something else to do and found Miracle Grow. We have an association with Miracle Grow, and my father was a Miracle Grow gardener until he met J.I. Rodell and stopped spraying the apples and everything else and became a very organic gardener, which is why I have all these old copies of organic gardening and farming. So anyway, I grew up in New York and started gardening when I was 6 months old because my father would bring me out in a little basket and leave me there while he rototilled. I didn't have enough vocabulary then or knowledge to be able to tell him, "Don't rototill, Dad." But that's what he did, and it was fun. It was a great way to grow up.
That's amazing. My mom was a teacher and I became a high school teacher. And when I was a high school teacher, the bureaucracy very soon got to me. And I was the guy in the garden after work, just trying to let it all go.
Yeah. Well, my father sold butter. If you can imagine how dull that is. So he let it all go. And it was one of these things. It was a family business. He, went to work for his father. Anyway, it was a terrific way to grow up, and really gardening is what people need to be doing because there's so much going on out there. I mean, we always think we're the center of the earth, and then you look at these things that are happening, and then you learn about Rhizophagia, and oh my God, yeah. So it's just terrific, and the tools keep changing and getting better and making it more interesting, and exactly. Exactly.
Green light now.
Yeah, isn't that incredible? And the ability to be able to pretty soon, I think, take a sample, take a picture of it, know what the bacteria in it are. It's just going to be. We can already send samples into places, and wow, it's just amazing.
So I was contacted by these folks in Denmark, and they were telling me that they have a program they've been feeding all the data they can find into, and it's private. And I was like, will you put that information and feed it onto our silence? But I don't know what their initial thing was, but they were basically let me know that we're doing this, we're developing an AI, it can read everything. And so I was like, oh snap, well, I want one for the people, and so I have this DNA sequencer, and it's amazing how affordable the nanopore MinION sequencer is. So I can do DNA sequencing at home, and I can do without PCRing bacteria easily. Wow. Bacteria breaks down super easily.
Yeah, sure.
And so connecting the visuals with the DNA samples as a check, has never been done. It's like going to the back of the book and looking what was there.
Well, can you imagine when it's all on your iPhone
Mm.
and you go up and take a picture. You take a sample and you take a picture of it somehow. Yeah, I mean, or there's a little attachment like you've got.
Right. Yeah, you shake it
Yeah,
up and then you attach
yeah,
it, your phone to it right there and you go,
dude.
and then it focuses for you, auto focuses, and you're scrolling around, finding what you want, and then you're like, oh, that, boom.
Yeah,
And then
yeah,
it does spectrometry on it and tells you the minerals because you probably could get polarized lenses easily put on these things, and then they just go through the degrees and do like the way we watch and something initializing. It would just go through all the polarized degrees and just snap all the
right,
different minerals.
right. Yeah, well, when the microbiometer people, and incidentally, if anybody wants to look at that, it's www.microbiometer.com. When they developed it, it was just for it only did the biomass
Mhm.
only. Pretty important stuff. Um,
That's
but
hard to
then
do.
yeah, it's very hard to do. And she was a microbiologist and had owned a company and worked with filtering and da 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 da. And I guess when she sold the company, they didn't say you're not allowed to get. Anyway, she went into this business and worked with a bunch of people and developed this wonderful product. And as we worked with it, you got to have fungal to bacteria ratio. Can you read that into this thing? And so there's several things that and pH. I mean, you should be able to do all of these things at once with your cell phone, and you can. And it's just fabulous.
I'm gonna get one.
And so yeah, it's a real introduction into what's coming um, in the future. And I think your job is to convince people that this is important enough to do in your own backyard garden. I mean, the weed growers and the farmers, they're gonna get the message real quickly.
Yeah.
It's the everyday gardener, and there's millions and millions of us who really need to be educated that this stuff is there, it's within reach, it's not complicated, the science is not that difficult, and we're getting there. So,
Do you think
and I
community
think that's why I
labs?
wrote these books. Excuse me.
Do you think community labs are the solution to buying some of these more expensive equipment? Because a bionutrient meter is
Yeah,
$500,
yeah.
but it can work all day.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So I think what's going to happen is either cooperative extension will be offering it or individual nurseries. I mean, here in Alaska, you want to have a pH test, you go to a nursery and they'll do it for you for free. Uh, Once this becomes a little bit more accessible, and it's getting there, go to a nursery, figure it out.
Yeah.
I can't see you bringing your stuff into CVS. So I guess the nursery is to be the best place to go and do it at. But
That's so incredible, though, because that allows it to be a community gathering place. And that's, in so much, I feel like is the biggest issue is that we're not as a community communicating enough on the ground and showing our
yeah,
test results and looking deeper. I'm so
yeah,
excited for your
yeah,
new book because all of your books, you get such good pictures.
yeah. This one, unfortunately, Dr. James, who supplied any picture, I mean, what a cooperative, terrific person.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, I sort of approached this book with the idea that I said to Dr. Elaine, I can write a book for you, and I said the same thing to James. The pictures are phenomenal. Unfortunately, some of them aren't high enough pixel to be able to put in a book. Your way of doing it, terrific. There are some great pictures in there. There are some references to websites and whatnot that people can go to, and again, people just need to learn to use their available tools. To me, the finest tool that a soil food webby individual can use is Google or
Mm.
DuckDuckGo. I mean, people write me questions all the time. What do you think I do? I go look it up on Google. I mean, if I can't find the answer, I can find a paper that'll have it's
It just
just,
takes
and
a
we're
while. It takes
it does.
sifting and reading.
But it's fun. It's fun to do it, and it's more fun to put it down and try to write it in a simplistic fashion so that an idiot like me can figure it out. And
How do you organize your notes?
I don't really. I have papers that I read all over the place. I don't really take notes.
No, no, I mean that's what I mean though. Like your references,
Yeah, not well.
like what I do is I print out each paper, and I know this is probably someone's like, what do you, why? I print out everything and I organize it by topic, and then I go through highlight things, and I create libraries so I can find what I
Yeah,
thought.
yeah, yeah. I sort of, I'm trying to figure out how I do it. I've got for each one of the books that I've written, I've got the original, all the manuscript stuff and potential pictures. You gather hundreds of them. You're only allowed to have 50. And I've got papers all over the place. And unfortunately, I know that someone's going to say, "Where did you get this the particular fact?" And I'm going to have to go back, and I don't organize very well, I guess is the answer. And I don't really know what my writing process is for this last book. I sat down and I just started writing. I mean,
Mhm.
I knew I had an outline for chapters, but I just started writing, and there was so much new stuff I had no idea. And then it's crazy stuff.
I'm
But let's
excited
wait
to
for
see
the
what
book.
you found. I'm so excited to see what you found.
Well, I hope you like it. When the book comes out, we'll talk about that particular thing. But I think it's more important that before that book comes out, people read the trilogy so that they can put it into the right perspective. And it's when Teaming with Microbe came out, fungi, mycorrhizal fungi, very far off in the distance. People could breed one. It was wasn't something that people were looking at, and very quickly it came on the radar. So teaming with fungi really fit in there. And then teaming with nutrients was one of these things that, how do they get all this? We know now how they get the stuff to the plant. How does it get inside the plant, and what happens in the plant? And gave me a whole new perspective on life. Nonetheless, gardening. I mean, it was, it's sort of, when I look at various things in regular life, I think, oh my God, didn't I see that in the microscope, or haven't I seen a picture of that inside a cell? It's
The
quite,
James Webb Telescope images, right? That everyone's talking about. I'm like, this looks like something familiar.
yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, to me, it looks like little RNA and mRNA. I mean, it's just, yeah, very trippy. Is that inside? Are we? Yeah, I call it the dandelion theory of life. Horton, who here's a who. It's the little people inside the little dandelion. There's another dandelion inside that dandelion. It's just all it goes, and the trees are infrastructure inside the cell that are like actin fibers. Anyway, and too many people who garden don't understand that process, and so when you look at your tomato, you don't really know what's going on. And if you don't inside that plant, and if you don't know what's going inside that plant, you can't understand, why does pH really make a difference? What nutrient real, and why do you need that nitrogen all over the place? You can't get the concept that it's the backbone of all these enzymes, and there's 10,000 of those enzymes in a single little cell, 10,000 different kinds, and probably 1,000 of each one. So, in a little teeny cell, why is it there? Why is it needed? What does the sulfur do when you throw it in that little mix? How does it change those enzymes or make it? People need to know this stuff. Unfortunately, they don't. They're learning.
Yeah.
We're getting
And, and one of the things John Kemp tried to impress upon me was like that each of these elements in ions and compounds are different charges, and so they're like keys that unlock processes within and your
Yeah.
book shows that.
Yeah. No, to me, it's very trippy. I mean, it's when I give the talk on this stuff, God, I haven't, pre-COVID and all that kind of stuff. The concept is that everything breaks down into the bonds. It's how things bond together. The same. It's John's way of saying the charges, because what's at the end of the bonds gives the charges. And those angles and things are what gave animation to life. And those different angles, and you change those angles, you get different kind of life. It's just Really
It's
quite
so
something.
wild though, because when you're in the wavelength, the blue wavelength,
Right,
and because the light comes from above, not below,
right.
the plant looks like glass. And so I was like, oh wait, of course, Matt. Light has to go into the plant for it to be absorbed. And then I was like, wait a second. If the
Yeah,
fungi look like crystals, they make crystals. And so much of all these things like colloidal gels, people are like, well, colloidal gel is a crystalline like liquid. It's
yeah, yeah. I mean, in fourth phase, if I mean, all that kind
right.
of stuff. Yeah, and I don't think people get the concept that there's always this little film of liquid around around soil particles and how do bacteria swim, and this is fascinating. Well, why is there a corkscrew bacteria? Because that's how they're so small that if you use oars, they wouldn't go anywhere. Corkscrew can, it's just fascinating. And the propellers that they've developed, wow. Yeah. So the whole thing and again, it goes back to this basic soil food web, all those
Mm.
bacteria running around in there. There's just, I think we just have to reorder things. So the bacteria there so they can go inside the plant in rhizophagia fashion, or the bacteria there so that they can be eaten by nematodes and protozoa. And the rhizophagia just came as what came first? All those little interesting questions are all going to be worked out. But it fits together so neatly. And the idea that, that there's a particular exudate that's made that feeds the rhizophagia bacteria, and the rhizophagia bacteria might help or stimulate the plant to create that exudate. Who's in charge? Yeah, phew. It's just all so beautiful and wonderful. And again, the more people get into it, the more they enjoy it.
So I read in the Rhizosphere, the second edition, that 80 to 90% of the exudation gets reabsorbed. And so for me, that like changed the whole cookies and cakes thing to like Hansel and Gretel.
Well, either that or there's two methods. I mean, one method is farming, where you put those exudates out, you attract things, and then you bring them in, and you harvest the stuff. And the other is ranching, where you bring them in, you shear the wool, and then you put them back out. Let them
Right.
grow the wool back again, and you bring them back in again. So the plant is doing both of those things. Of course, we are, we're thinking like humans. That's not how the plant obviously thinks about it, but I'm certain they're connected, and we know they're connected. And
It's
then
a
you throw in
feedback
things.
loop, right? I mean, and the only way that the root hairs grow is if there's rhizophagy happening and they're bombarding
Right.
them with the superoxide.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah. I mean, that's a mind blower right there. I mean, you don't think people are going to believe that? I mean, it's just, and I just, in fact, I just did I send you a copy?
no,
No,
but I
it's
would love
just
one.
2 days. Yeah. 2 days ago, I got the PDF. Sorry, people who are listening in here. I will send you the advanced PDF if you promise not to share it with your readers.
Yeah, I won't do
Uh,
that. Absolutely not.
Yeah, and when I wrote Teaming with Microbes, if you look at the back of it, there are 19 rules of using the soil food web.
Hmm.
Now, who puts 19 rules down? There was obviously a 20th rule, which I had included, and it was don't lend this book to anybody. Make them go out and buy their own copy. Timber Press didn't think that was funny, so they took that out. But anyway, I'm going to give it to you, but don't lend it to anybody.
You got it.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, it's an interesting read.
So I'm so excited to read about it. So have you thought about the whole implications of horizontal gene transfer and the fact that they're saying now that evolution is not primary for changes and adaptation, but horizontal gene transfer is, at least in E. coli
And in bacteria. Yeah.
uh-huh.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty amazing. A bacterium can saddle up next to another bacterium and put this little shoot out, go into the other bacterium, and they can, in fact, the other bacterium can do it in reverse, and then they can just transfer a little bit of DNA and go on with their lives as a new strain. I mean, wow. Uh,
And then
Bacteria are amazing.
And then from my DNA sequencing work, I'm figuring out that like 40% of everything is unclassified. And then there's this like 10 to 14% that's always human. And so there's a collection of genes that passes through everything, and they're like commonly held by everything. And I think we're identifying them as human,
Hmm.
and they're actually just ubiquitous.
Yeah,
And
maybe.
theoretically, I've read that DNA can last millions of years,
Hmm.
and as it breaks down.
Hmm.
And so I'm pretty sure the 40% unclassified that we are always seeing is fragments of DNA that are
Hmm.
pieces of dead and breaking down DNA. Because when we do DNA sequencing, we spend all day and often 2 days trying to break the DNA down. We're
Hmm.
bombarding it with caustic salts. We're like doing like constant like we're putting beads in there with it, and the
Yeah,
proprietary
still,
chemicals. And so
it's
it's like
still,
that's just to get it to break down. And so what are your thoughts about that?
it's just, we think about humus. What is humus? I'm coming to think, and it's just it's dead parts of bacteria, and you can't break it down anymore. And so, if it's dead parts of bacteria, it's got to have little DNA pieces and all that kind of stuff in there. And whew, yeah, there's just so much we just don't know. We can't see it, we don't know it, and we're learning to see it. I think that's if James uses confocal whatever it's called. It's how we look at things so that we can see stuff, because humans don't believe stuff until we can see it. And so his kind of microscopy is just, I guess, not available to everybody, and so they're not seeing what he's seeing. They
Hmm.
will. Um,
Well,
yeah.
he's in this paper that I have, he goes over step by step. I can share it with you that each stain and how it was done. And
Oh
he
yeah.
credits this. Okay, you've seen it.
Yeah. Oh,
So
yeah. And the students are all in there. I mean, that's the
they're
thing
so
about James.
awesome.
God, can you? I mean, I want to come back. I want to come back, do my undergraduate with Dr. Elaine, and then do my graduate with James. I mean, holy crow. But that, so that's what we try to do. We read everything they write. It's
Yeah.
just fabulous.
So
Yeah.
the wild thing is, it's like Elaine Ingham, when she says, "Oh, well, we don't want a pathogenic creating environment." That's literally the horizontal gene transfer situation where you have E. coli, which has millions of species. They call it the universal chassis, and
Yeah.
they start taking up genes from the pathogenic environment, expressing the environment, and then they're pathogens.
Yeah.
I want to be able to prove that they're dropping the genes and taking up those, like, I don't know how yet though, but if we can, I mean, I don't know how she even knew that. It's like, how did she
Yeah.
know that? It's amazing.
Well, she studies this stuff. She's smart. Yeah, and then of course you think about all the master gardeners of the world, who are beginning, who were told at the beginning, no, 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 no. We this is what we teach, and that and now they're all talking compost and all these things that people have been pushing, and it's whew, again. I mean, I just what a gift she gave us.
Yeah. I think it's opened this huge door. I mean, thinking about rhizophagy and then thinking about how it applies to trichomes, plant hairs, I feel
Mm-hmm.
like we're going to have misters that are like super specific timing. It's like, oh, this happens right before the sun hits them. We lightly missed it so that it dries into them, doesn't cause any like possible like, you know what I mean, water issues, right? But it re-inoculates them with very specific biology that causes this terpene to peak, and you know what I mean, like, right?
Well, we talk about terpenes in those trichomes, because obviously, if you're into cannabis, that's what counts. Wow, bacteria talk to each other in terpene language, so that's why it made so much sense. I mean, it's just, but it's the growth aspect, and again, it's hard to get your the fact that they grow because the bacteria it caused them. Phew, to grow so that they can be spit out into the soil or out into onto the phyllosphere. Wow.
So that's microbial information that they're taking into their bodies, and then it's modulating the way they feel. That is intense, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah. So I remember seeing a picture of was it Houston? I think it was Houston, Texas, of a neighborhood they'd had a snowfall, and I would say there were 4 or 5, 6 lawns, maybe 5 of them had snow on them, and the 5th one didn't. It was right in the middle of the other ones. Because it had an endophyte in it, obviously. That raised the freezing point. I mean, holy crow! These things do all sorts of stuff, and these bacteria are capable of producing all of the phytohormones that a plant produces. And so they're inside endophytic, and they're minding their own business, producing a plant hormone for whatever reason they have, helping the plant. Well, they're producing gibberellic acid, causing the wow. Now, sometimes they produce things that cause the plant to die or to rot, the fruit to rot, et cetera, et cetera. But that's all endophytic. And we've all been using endophytic bacteria probably ever since we started gardening. Using you take your pea plants and you roll them through a rhizobium. That's an endophytic bacterium. So bacteria is phenomenal.
I've been finding rhizobia in every compost. Mesorhizobia, bradyrhizobia, Burkholderia, in everything. And so what I realized is that because it makes it through hot compost just fine, that means that it's part of the digestion and feedback loop for all ruminants that are eating legumes.
Sure. Well, most of these bacteria, they go through the compost, and that's sort of the strange thing, because if you treat them wrong, they don't live, but they go through hell in compost. I mean, it's just it's really something. And the fungi and all. Again, I wish I'd gone back and been a little bit more. I majored in geology. I should have done mineralogy. Would have been a lot more fun. But geology is useful, obviously, gardening and things that go into plants, et cetera, et cetera. But it's the microbiology that fascinates me. I mean, holy crow. Whew.
David Montgomery is, he was geology as well.
Right. Yeah, I remember reading his book, and actually I've been communicating a little bit with him because I want him to take a look at this book, because his first book had a segment in there about how the stomach operates and how the intestines operate. And it turns out this book that's coming out, is the bacteria back into the root meristem cells the same way they back into the intestines with the same chemicals, butyric acid. Ooh, it's just like, so we've always talked about how the stomach is just like the soil, all that kind of stuff. It is. And it's really something.
I want to connect all our work to Dr. like Zach Bush's work, right?
Yeah.
Fun. Yeah. I feel like we're so close. I feel like there's this like thin wall, and we've all been tunneling for like 100 years at this point, and it's like we just have to break through.
I don't think it's a thin wall. I think it's still thick. I think we're learning so much amazing stuff we can't imagine. But instrumentation gets better and better, and it's just
well, that's the thing. We got to get people sensitized, it feels like, and aware, and like looking at their soil, and composting well, and I think testing and looking closer at things, that's gonna cause a soil science revolution.
Well, that's why I think this microbiometer. You should contact them. Afterwards. I'll put you in touch. We'll see whether we can. It is such an unbelievable thing. For years, ever since the book came out, I've been looking for a way to be able to endorse products and say to people, yes, this product teams with microbes. This one doesn't. And here's the test results to tell you this is the instrument. I call it an instrument. I mean, it's just so simple to use. And then put it down on this little card and take a picture of it, and then you're done. Tells you everything
Wow.
you need to know. And so the challenge has been, and you can appreciate this, how do we get the United States Department of Agriculture to understand this is just as important as knowing what the pH is? Who do you go to? Well, their funding comes from different places, and it's about, this is not something big industry wants to see out there. What happens
Yeah.
when you put that chemical fertilizer on your soil and your microbiomass goes down? Oh,
So what do you think about the idea of the open transparent database where we're showing our test results and then showcasing on a bioregional, starting with our bioregional levels and our local farmers, that the healthy soils create the healthy plants?
okay. So the microbiometer people are doing that, and so they sell this thing all around the world. I haven't looked recently. I've only this was all in conversation. They'll tell you if you're in Australia what a good soil looks like. They've got a database which they share,
That's
and when you
awesome.
take a test, it goes into the database. So they're doing what you want to do. Again, unfortunately, Judith Fitzgerald died, and she was right up there. I'm telling you, it's just she's right up there. Terrific, unbelievable.
It's so hard. I mean, it was like Michael Phillips recently passed away. The giants
Yeah,
in our communities.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so empowering everyone to get involved, I think your books are absolutely incredible. I'm
Thank you.
so excited because it's true. We're teaming with these microbes. It's the exact perspective and
Yeah.
mindset you need.
Well, and it's again, I get credit for this stuff, but it's really the subject matter has nothing to do with me. But those books, I got them up there, I guess, someplace over there. But downstairs, I've got the translations, and I am dumbfounded. How many? I mean, you pick up a book. I got contacted by the government of Turkey. The government of Turkey published the books. Wow. Korean, French, Slavo. I mean, I have a bootleg copy, and it's bootleg because they took it from me. Romanian. How many Romanian gardeners are there? Well, there's a soil food web book for them to be able to read. So hopefully the word's getting out there, and I know it's getting out there. It's Spanish now. It's Portuguese, Dutch. We're talking to China about Chinese, and so yeah, people are learning about it, and frankly, it's the science.
Yeah.
So you can't deny it. To talk about being a chemical oriented society is, it's like talking about Trump winning the election. It doesn't work. It didn't happen. It doesn't work. You got to go to the, you know what I mean? You got to go to the science.
Yeah.
And there's the answer right there. The chemical situation is not sustainable. It's not regenerative. And if we're learning anything, we've got to be regenerative because we're losing everything. We have, how many years soil we got left? This is so stupid. When we could be building soil, holy crow. We better be because our kids won't be eaten if we don't. Terrible.
It feels like somewhat disingenuous that the atmosphere is like on average 78% nitrogen, and that we're like reliant upon this nitrogen synthetic fertilizer that destroys organic matter, destroys fungi upon application. And so it's like I, this is something that's so abundant. Everything we've mentioned, exactly everything we've mentioned, is like, oh, we're talking about the fact that endophytes fix nitrogen. We're talking about the trichomes have endophytes, which means they fix nitrogen. And then roots, we're talking about rhizobia, which fixes nitrogen. and it's kind of endless. You know what I mean? It's like you can do so many things to bring in the nitrogen naturally, and then have plants that are more nutrient dense and more have a better equilibrium. And it feels like on purpose.
Yeah, of course it is. Money talks, money talks. When you think, I'm old enough to know that in 1964, I think in November, something like, or October, they ran a Life magazine, which everybody got back then, uh, cover organic food.
Mm.
Now you think about what supermarkets looked like when you were a kid. There was no organic food section. Now we've got organic food sections. We've got big organic food sections. We've overcome the concept that growing organic doesn't make a bit of difference. All that kind of propaganda bullshit that came out, and that we've been able to say no, it does make a difference. It makes a difference from nutrient density, bricks, all the way right on down the road. So it's happening, but it's too slow. We've got 40, 50 years.
Yeah.
Well, this should happen tomorrow. And
So I
it's,
feel like we got to go to the people directly, and that's why I've been focusing on getting people motivated, and I'm going to have it like ranked. So the person with the highest organic matter levels, like the farm with the highest organic matter levels in your bioregion, you'll be able to see it, and
right.
that's the place to go to the farmers market with.
Sure. Yeah. Well, no, it's true. And there ought to be tests. This is the nutrient density of this particular food or that particular
Oh
food, et
yeah.
cetera. So, um,
Do you have a
yeah,
bionutrient
it's
meter? Have you tried that out?
bionutrient. No, I do bricks,
Okay, I've
but I
got a
haven't done
bricks meter,
bionutrient.
a bionutrient meter. I want to do a little. I mean, it's plant sap analysis is expensive,
Yeah.
but I want to marry all those things, and because when we do tests against tests, we get very interesting results.
Yeah.
So I love the holistic. Well, you know me. I love to try to get as many perspectives as possible because
Right.
that's
Right. You're
all.
gonna love this microbiometer. I'm telling you, it just changed my whole way of looking at the testing because pH to me, pH only counts when it's right around the rhizosphere. I don't care what the pH is up at the surface. I don't care what it's. And how do you measure that at the rhizosphere? It's very difficult.
Mhm.
Yeah, well, now you can using this system, but again, convincing farmers who have to make a living to make the change is very difficult to do. That's why we can start with gardeners because it's pretty simple to do. And hopefully some of this stuff filters up. When I go to the supermarket, I look for organic foods. I grow organic foods. Why would I want to buy chemical foods?
Yeah.
Hopefully, people are doing that, and that's sort of key to all of this stuff. But
What do
it's
you think
just
of the Ward's Haney test, where they're doing the CO2 respiration and color paddles?
Judith convinced me that they're no good. But what do I know? She just I believed anything she said because she was such a great microbiologist. I need to know more about it before I can make a comment. I guess that's
Right.
the best thing to say. What do I know? I
And
was
it's all
trained as an attorney.
generalized. It's all
Yeah.
generalized. There's no separation of fungal to bacterial.
Mm-hmm.
But it'd be interesting to see like the addition, because it allows us to provide, or at least this is what I'm gonna do. It's gonna allow me to like in context see if maybe the respiration expresses differently than they expect in relation to the amount of
Mm-hmm.
because because it's either or, right? Either there's like a few more microbes that aren't being read on the microbe reader, or there's more respiration and their way of calculating respiration to numbers is wrong,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
which makes sense. I mean,
Yeah.
like that's one of the arguments is it's like, well, microbes differ in their ability to like digest sugars, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So then that would
Yeah.
change the rates of CO2 release.
Yeah, it's not really my area of expertise, but it is
Okay.
fascinating stuff. All of this stuff is just, yeah, I got to get this on my screen there. There we go. The whole concept of measurement is and I think in the early days, that was one of the things that really got people. I mean, how do you compost tea? How do you measure what's going on, et cetera, et cetera? I mean, I, and there is something that's sort of strange. I mean, I always had great success with compost tea. If I had crappy soil and good soil, putting the compost tea on the good soil didn't make a bit of difference, but putting it on the crappy soil made a difference. And I could never
Mm.
figure out why people couldn't replicate that. That's the big complaint about compost tea. It's very hard to replicate, blah, 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 blah. And so there
It
again,
was
coming up with
easy for
stand.
me.
Yeah,
Compost
me
always
too.
worked like magic.
Uh, I don't get it, but yeah, sort of crazy stuff. But the world is changing and it's getting much more organic as we go in many, many ways. Although big agri, man, it's got a hold on us. Definitely has a hold on us.
Yeah.
And it's
Well, I really appreciate your work, your continued efforts, and I love the way your books look. So if it's one person that's been doing it this whole time, or if it's you, I mean, man, you are amazing. You
well,
are. I
Timber
love it.
Press is Timber Press has really been terrific, and they're fun to work with, and now they've been purchased by another big gigantic company, but they've kept their it's a nice Portland, Oregon based publisher, and they concentrate on gardening books, and they only take a few, and they really concentrate on that. And the editor, the editor that I have, I've had for 3 out of the 4 books, and she's just so terrific and has such a great sense of humor. And it's very hard to write a book, and so I want to put a little wisecrack in. Most editors, that goes no. So we work well together, and the formula is pretty simple. I mean, science first, application, and the science on this one was not that easy. I mean, uh, how do you explain this stuff without getting complicated? And it's very tough. I try never to use a chemical formula. um, the Krebs cycle. I will never ever include an explanation of the Krebs cycle in my books. It's too complicated. So they've been fun to write, and people have been very, very, very good to buy them and talk nicely about them. I really, I've always really appreciated that. You put your soul out there when you write a book. And you never know how it's going to be received. And this next one that's coming out, which people can pre-order on Amazon, I might add, Teeming with Bacteria. It's, as we know, this is such brand. The Rhizophagia was discovered in 2010. That's not that far off. We got a long ways to go. And in just the past couple of years, James's students and James have really come a long, long way. And the difference between what was known in 2010 and 11 from the Australian group that discovered this to the Rutgers group, which has carried it forward. Wow, they've really changed the whole perspective and what's actually going on in this system. So that's happening with every single individual organism, nematodes. Each one, people are learning more and more and more about how they operate, the interconnection, and never ending. Unfortunately, now I get on my real soapbox. Unfortunately, the biggest problem we have in this country and in the world is we teach our kids about dinosaurs and not microbes.
Mm.
So stupid. Dinosaurs, they're gone. They really don't add a lot to our current knowledge base. They certainly don't make us better gardeners or people. They have nothing to do with our bodies. We never come across them. They don't impact us in any way, whereas microbes do. And there's no reason why a little kid can't have a plush toy of an E. coli the same way he does of T. rex, and learn the names of the bacterium by the time they're 5, and be able to spell and list them the same way they can all these complicated dinosaur names. It's a mistake, and our education system needs to change. And once that happens, people have much finer appreciation for what's going on. Until you know where our country is on the map, means nothing to you. And it's the same thing with this stuff. So
That is amazing. that's inspiring. And I feel like I should do a children's book next. So many of the things I do is it has that cartoon quality to it.
Yeah. No, your diagrams in the book would be perfect for this kind of stuff. There is one soil food web book for the children. Um, it's what is Tom Pugh wrote it? A guy named Tom Pugh in Tucson, Arizona. But we need that. We need books for kids that talk about microbes and how they operate and what they do. And, your body is more microbes than not. And how does that happen? And where did they come from? And what's little microscopic cellular stuff do we need to know that stuff? And we don't learn it until we get into late high school and college. And that's a real mistake of our educational system, I think. But
I completely agree.
yeah, and you're a teacher, so you're
Yeah, I'm an English teacher, and I was an aspiring writer, and I was actually a science fiction writer.
really.
Yeah,
Wow.
and I basically just was white noise in the publishing industry when I started off, and
It's tough.
uh,
Yeah, well, your book looks just like one of the Timber Press books. You could clearly have them publish them for you. The the idea of science fiction. I mean, isn't this all sort of science fiction? I mean, what happens inside a cell and the way a boron molecule gets into the cell and what form it has to be in and how the charge operates and the pump and mechanism to get it across the membrane. The whole idea of membranes. Oh my gosh. I mean, a basic thing that every gardener ought to know about, nobody does. It's just a shame. It's just absolutely a shame. And the way they're put together and the way they work, and it's just so beautiful. And then you look at the pictures of them, little rafts of things floating inside these membranes that are around every cell. And then the whole concept of a little space between the inside of the cell wall and the membrane itself and things happening in there. What a bunch of nerds we are.
I
There's
love
so many
it.
more important things to do, It's just, yeah, it's fascinating.
Thank you so much, Jeff. I really appreciate it. Appreciate you.
No, it's fun.
And my trilogy is inspired by your trilogy. And
There you
you went
go.
into the plants, and so I felt like in honor of that, I went into the soil.
There you go. Yeah, and the soil is everything. I mean, and it really is everything. And if we don't wake up and pay attention, it's gone. I love the story that back in the 30s in the Dust Bowl era, there was a gigantic storm in the Dust Bowl, and folks in Washington, D.C., I'm trying to remember whether they were doing something that was going to impact the Dust Bowl in a positive way, and they couldn't get the votes. And they were in Washington, D.C., and they looked out the window, and all the dust had blown over through Washington, D.C., et cetera. So, man, oh, man. We read these stories, and we don't understand that was inches of soil going and just feet of soil disappearing. Wow. We got to prevent that from happening. And the stuff that you and I are talking about is the only way that works. So
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Indeed. So, and when the book comes out, we'll do a thing. We'll hold up some pictures, and the pictures are amazing, aren't they? I mean, they are incredible.
James is, this is why I actually have come up with all these different ways of visualizing things and why I got this microscope, because James is an artist. I mean, he gets these incredible pictures, and then it's like his use of stains are dynamic. He's like, oh, I'm going to be able to map this by doing this. And I'm like, wait, first of all, how did you figure that out? And then he has 9 stains in a row and each taking a snapshot. And then I'm like, okay, how did you time when to stain so that you would get it in this stage of the process? Like, it was just masterful.
Yeah. So let's take, for example, the pictures that just came out. We're filming this on the same day as the first pictures from the Hubble telescope. And those first pictures that came out, of the universe with all the additional stars and the colors. The colors are unbelievable. There's that one, I'm sure you can remember it. There's that one picture that James took of the root with having had 5 or 6 explosions from the root hairs, and they're in blue, and inside you can see the browns and the purples and the yellows. Oh my God! Yeah, I want to come back. As I say, I want to be a grad student in James's lab. That would be fun, really fun.
That's amazing. Yeah, one of my challenges for myself this fall is I want to replicate his work like at my
Wow.
home lab and running through his papers because he tells you exactly what to do. I mean, he lays it all out. That's what makes him such an incredible teacher. And he gives
Yeah,
credit
yeah,
every step of the way to each student.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, to lay out, here's the process of how you isolate an individual, endophyte. This is which the steps you need to go through, and this is the chemicals you need to use, and when you add them, and yeah, the whole thing is just simply phenomenal. And you're right. I mean, that last paper that came out, it was essentially his students that wrote it, and he just was he put them all. Wow, it was terrific. It was just terrific. It must be amazing to go on a picnic with those guys. I mean, phew, man, because how can they not be as excited and into that stuff as we are, just looking at it from the outside? I'm so jealous.
Well, that's what inspired they were on the roof and they found a hackberry growing in the roof tiles and they all looked at each other and said, this must mean something. And then they started testing it and then realized it was like, that's a cousin of cannabis. They're in the same family. And so they were like, and I think it was a hackberry. But it was what inspired it. It was this plant in the roof, and it's same family as the cannabis, and that's why it led to him studying hemp, and it's just wild.
Yeah, it is. It really is. And those latest discoveries with regard to the trichomes are just going to set the industry. And it's interesting that that particular industry is the one that probably is the best in terms of adopting new, modern thinking about how you do stuff. There is a series of endophytes whose names I can't remember because I got CRS, can't remember. Uh, uh, that they're beginning to experiment with that are going to trickle down into the home gardeners ability to be able to use, and it's just terrific. I'm working with a guy who's got a company. This guy he now owns the patent to a microbe that you put underneath a plant, like say a tomato plant or a cannabis plant. You put it underneath the plant, and this fungi emits a gas that causes the plant to ripen and grow quicker, 20 days, and ripen quicker, and the fruits are bigger. It's just, holy, wow, patented. As soon as he gets the investors lined up on that one, wow. But all of that stuff's coming available, and we're all going to be better for it. It's going to be just terrific, and you're right. Being transparent about how these things work and operate is going to make more people discover new stuff, uh, and again, you can tell you can hardly shut me up, and I know you're on Zoom, and we only get an hour, but every one of us works in an individual garden or yard that's completely different from a microbial perspective in some regards than everybody else's. So we've each got the ability to be able to make some discoveries about what makes our stuff grow better than the neighbors and things like that. It's exciting. It's a great time to be into this stuff.
I think if we just start paying attention, we're going to notice incredibly large amounts of things. I mean, I know people now are doing mushroom hunts with the UV lights at night. They're seeing things that they've never seen before because when have we had teams of people combing the natural world with that wavelength, right?
Yeah, yeah. Who've
And
had an interest? Yeah,
right. And so it's and the same thing with this blue wavelength, the cyan blue wavelength. We're seeing things that we're seeing things in the way they are perceived by the actual microbes and the wavelength that they experience 2 to 3 inches deep into the soil. And so the world looks functionally different. And so all the processes that you're iterating in your books, and we can see it's it's a fantastic moment to be involved, because it's like it's both that like the ground floor is completely open, like people can walk in and start learning about this, but it's also that like new discoveries like are right over the horizon. It feels like that's what I meant about
Yeah.
like, breaking
Yeah. Yeah.
through.
Yeah. Yeah. They are. And of course, what I always have to tell people is I am not the scientist that discovers these things. I write about them, but it's Elaine and it's James, and those are the people that do that stuff. And to me, what makes these times exciting is that we've got these people out there that are constantly, that have pushed away agribusiness and said, "I'm not going to let you impact me. You're not going to prevent me from doing what I need to be doing." So that you protect your financial fiefdom. And these people are out there doing this stuff. You're one of them, making discoveries and passing them on, and making it easy for guys like me. And we can end here. Guys like me to be able to write a couple of books, and spread the word of what you people have discovered, not me. And my hat is off to all the scientists of the world who are reporting this stuff out, and encouraging people like me to write about this stuff, so that the word is spread.
Thank you so much, Jeff. I really appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
for
Let's do this
taking the
again.
time.
Take it easy.
Regenerative soil microscopy is a manual for how to explore, assess, and evaluate your soil, your compost, your roots, mycorrhizae and microbes, and more. And it's all stepped out. So it's visual, it's also written, but you'll be able to follow along like a picture book and copy the steps. You'll be able to learn how to operate a microscope. You'll be able to learn how to work with stains. You'll be able to learn bright field, dark field, epifluorescence, all the most powerful modes of microscopy you'll have at your fingertips. And you'll be able to capture, catalog, assess, and evaluate, and then make clear choices and decisions to improve that soil. And it's going to take a public database to organize this information so that we can run this data against itself, and that we can expose all these caveats and connections and get nearly an infinite amount of feedback and insight possibilities out of over 100 points of distinction that you can run against each other, as well as DNA. So the DNA sequencing is going to unlock things even more and allow us to understand microscopy at such a deeper level. We're going to be able to check our answers, but when 1,000 or 100,000 entries have been entered, and we start connecting these things and going across bioregions, across pH, it will open the door to data that no scientist has ever had access to before. And it's going to be public, so we all have access to it, so that information doesn't get locked up. But I need you to know how to operate your microscope and to catalog these things and interpret these things so that you can add to the database and be part of this. So I built an online community, training, and certification program that dovetails and goes deeper than the textbook. So we're there working together. There's live Q&A. There's live demonstrations, and there's an online community where you can connect with people from all over the world interested in soil science. A new horizon in soil science is upon us, and you're all invited to participate. And remember, it's a Kickstarter, so if you don't support it, it doesn't happen. Get Regenerative Soil Microscopy, the book, the course, and join us in the Our Soil database.